Blake's attorney leaned forward at the plaintiff's table, both hands flat on the polished wood like he was bracing for something that required physical support. Your Honor, we're contesting this will under Arizona Revised Statutes 142204, alleging undue influence. The evidence is clear. Russell Moreno exploited a vulnerable woman during her final illness, manipulating her into disinheriting her biological son. Blake sat beside him in an untucked designer button-down, legs crossed, arms folded. He'd worn that same smirk since we'd walked in 3 hours ago, the look of someone who'd already counted his inheritance. Behind me, 24 contractors who'd worked Claire's properties over the years filled the gallery. They'd taken the day off without me asking. My attorney stood. She walked to the evidence table carrying the first stack, both hands supporting its weight. Brown leather ledgers, each one 9 by 12 inches with a year stamped on the spine. The courtroom went silent. Even the contractors in the gallery behind me stopped shifting in their seats. She placed the first ledger down with a solid thump. Then another, then another. 2000, 2001. The stack grew, each notebook identical except for the year marked in black ink. Mr. Moreno documented every transaction with the decedent's son, my attorney said. 23 years of records. 17 signed promissory notes from Blake Winters to Claire Moreno. $347,000 in unpaid loans to his mother. Blake uncrossed his legs. His jaw clenched, and the muscle near his ear started twitching. He leaned forward. Objection. His attorney shot to his feet. Financial records between family members are irrelevant to a will contest based on undue influence. I kept my hands flat on my notepad, the same position I'd held for 3 hours. Judge Khalil looked up from her notes. Denied. All financial dealings between parties are discoverable. Motion to exclude is denied. Blake's smirk disappeared. I'd seen that expression before on contractors who'd underbid a job and realized it too late. He leaned forward, whispering urgently to his attorney. Behind me, 24 contractors in work clothes shifted forward as one. Blake's face went from tanned to pale gray in the time it took Judge Khalil to finish her sentence. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe right now. I sat in my workshop office cataloging Claire's death, the way I'd catalog a job site. 1 week gone, funeral 3 days ago. Casserole dishes from neighbors still stacked in the kitchen refrigerator. I cataloged hand planes. Stanley, No. 4, 1952. Miller's Falls, No. 2, 9, 1947. My hands moved on their own, needing the familiar weight of rosewood and steel. The ledgers sat in their filing cabinets across the room. 24 brown leather notebooks, spines marked 1999 through 2022. I hadn't added new entries since the hospital. I met Claire in 1998 at a community fundraiser for the new library. She was manning the baked goods table, and I was there because Tom dragged me. 38 years old, never married, too busy building the contracting business to think about family. She was 42, widow. Her first husband died in a car accident 6 years earlier, left her with an 11-year-old son named Blake who'd turned that dead man into a saint no living person could match. We married at the courthouse in March 1999. Blake didn't come. Wrote, left a note on the kitchen counter at Jason's house. Stayed there 3 days. Army taught me to document everything. Supply requisitions in triplicate. Written orders for anything that mattered. The habit stuck. When I married Claire, the habit expanded to include family finances. The first Saturday morning after we moved into the Prescott house. Spring morning in 1999. Birds in the pine trees. Coffee smell from the vendor's porch. Blake sat in the truck bed wearing headphones, staring at his portable CD player. Claire walked over, knocked on the tailgate. He adjusted his headphones, pretending not to hear. Your choice, she said, quiet. Came back to where I was examining a box of rusty planes. The vendor was an elderly woman whose husband had died the previous month. She stood on her porch, watching strangers pick through his tools. How much for the Stanley? I asked. Which one? I held up a 1950s no. 4 smoothing plane, rosewood handle, barely any sole wear. $5. Claire glanced at the growing pile of rusty planes. Your grandfather would have loved this. She was teasing, but her hand found mine. Workshop collection, I said. Same thing, from the truck, Blake's voice carried. Retirement museum sounds right. We loaded 3 planes, 2 chisels, and a handsaw into cardboard boxes. Blake stayed in the truck bed the whole time. That became our Saturday ritual. Estate sales, garage sales, online auctions. I'd find tools from the 1940s and 1960s, the era when my grandfather worked as a Finnish carpenter. Men who built things to last. Claire understood. She'd tease about the collection taking over the garage, then help me negotiate prices with vendors who thought rusty metal was junk. Blake never joined, not once in 23 years. I bought the Prescott house in 1999 for $187,000. Put down $40,000 from my business savings. Not Claire's inheritance from her first husband. My money. Documented with bank transfer records I filed in the cabinet, marked mortgage property. A recent appraisal estimated $520,000. I'd checked it the week before she died. 23 years of payments I made from contracting income. Every canceled check in chronological order. I converted the detached garage into my workshop in 2001. 600 square feet split between woodworking area and climate-controlled office. Table saw, dust collection system, workbench with vises. The office section got 4 filing cabinets from a government surplus sale, a metal desk, a rolling chair. 4 filing cabinets, olive green, government surplus from 1986, same kind we used in Germany. Labels typed on Brother typewriter, not printed. Old habits. The plain collection filled the wall shelves. 206 pieces by the time Claire got sick. Each one restored to working condition, blade sharp enough to shave with. I kept the lockbox safe in the corner. Fireproof, combination lock. Inside, original loan agreements, promissory notes, bankruptcy filings where Blake listed me as unpaid creditor. The first request came in March 2004. Blake was 19, working as a line cook while planning his restaurant concept. Farm to table before that phrase got trendy. He needed $18,500 for the lease deposit. Came to dinner, brought printouts showing projected revenue, talked about securing the space before someone else grabbed it. "I'll pay you back at $400 a month," he said, "soon as we turn profitable." Claire looked at me, hoping I'd say yes. "We'll need a promissory note," I told Blake. Blake's jaw clenched. The muscle near his ear started twitching, same tell he'd had since he was 17. "You're my stepdad, not a bank. Promissory note with repayment terms. Witnessed and signed." Tom came over that evening. I drafted the note by hand on legal paper. Date, amount, stated purpose, repayment schedule. Blake signed at the kitchen table. Tom signed as witness. I filed it in the cabinet marked Loans Family. I entered the transaction in the first brown leather ledger. March 15, 2004, $18,500. Farm Fresh Prescott lease deposit. Promise, $4,000 month, beginning when restaurant profitable. Filed the original note in the cabinet. Made a copy for my records. The restaurant opened in September 2004, closed 14 months later. Bankruptcy filing listed $127,000 in liabilities. I was down as an unsecured creditor for $30,500. The first loan of $18,500 initial loan plus $12,000 more when he couldn't make payroll. Blake moved back home for 8 months. Rent-free, talked about his next venture while eating dinners Claire cooked. He never mentioned the loan, never made a payment. I documented that too. Ledger entry, March 2006. Farm Fresh bankruptcy final. $30,500 unpaid. No contact from Blake regarding repayment. Combat engineers documented everything. Captain Morrison got court-martialed because his supply sergeant didn't keep proper logs. $300,000 in missing equipment. No paperwork, no defense. I didn't plan to audit Blake. I just couldn't break the habit. 6 months ago, 3 weeks before she died, Claire held my hand in the hospital room. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. They'd given her 8 months. She got 6. "Don't let him turn you bitter, Russell," she said. "You're a better man than that." Her words. Exactly that. I sat with the Stanley no. Pour in my hands now. The plane I'd restored during her final months, working on it in the hospital room while morphine pump beeped every 6 minutes. Rosewood handle smooth under my fingers. Blade sharp. The ledgers sat in their cabinets. 23 years. $347,000. I could leave them there. Blake take the house, the workshop, everything. That's what Claire would want. Or would she? The ledgers sat in their cabinets. 23 years of documentation. $347,000 in unpaid loans. 17 signed promissory notes. 3 bankruptcy filings. Weapons I built without meaning to. Just the habit of writing things down, because that's what you do when something matters. Claire's last words played on repeat. "Don't let him turn you bitter." I didn't know if being a better man meant forgiving the inheritance grab I could already see coming, or if it meant finally making Blake face what things cost. Either way, the ledgers were ready. The wedding photo hung on the wall beside a framed blueprint of the first house we renovated together. 1909. Her in the dress she'd worn to her sister's wedding 2 years before. Me in the suit I'd bought for Dad's funeral. We didn't waste money on things that didn't matter. Foundation of everything, Blake now planned to contest. I set the plane down, picked up the first ledger. Ran my thumb across the year stamped on the spine. The leather was worn smooth from 2 decades of opening and closing, documenting and filing. I opened the first ledger. March 15, 2004. Blake's signature next to mine. Tom's witness signature below. The ink hadn't faded. I set down the 999 ledger and reached for the next one. 2000. The leather had cracked along the spine from years of handling, pages filled with handwritten entries, each one documenting another cycle of hope and disappointment. Tom stopped by the workshop that first Saturday after the funeral. Found me at the desk with ledgers spread across every surface. "You cataloging for the estate?" he asked. "Something like that." He picked up the 2004 ledger. "Read the farm fresh entry. Set it down like it might detonate. How much total? $347,000 in signed notes. Another 73 in things he borrowed and never returned." Tom pulled over the folding chair, sat down across from me. "He's going to contest the will. Probably. You've got all this documented. Every transaction." He nodded, looked at the stacks of brown leather notebooks. 23 years of my handwriting. I tried warning you. He had. Every time. March 2004. Blake brought printed revenue projections to Sunday dinner. Farm-to-table concept. Locally sourced produce. Artisan breads baked in-house. "The space is perfect," he said. "Downtown location. Previous tenant just closed. Landlord wants $18,500 for first month, last month, and security." Claire's hand found mine under the table. Squeezed once. She'd been waiting 2 years for Blake to show this kind of initiative. "What's your capital situation?" I asked. "I've got 12,000 saved. Need the rest by Friday, or I lose the lease." Tom and I were working a kitchen renovation the next morning, stripping old cabinets. He set down his pry bar. "You thinking about lending him that money?" "Claire wants me to." "What do you want?" I didn't answer right away. Pulled another cabinet off the wall. "I want him to succeed." "That's not the same as thinking he will." "I know." Tom watched me work for a while. "Get it in writing. Make him sign something." I drafted the note that evening. Blake signed at the kitchen table. Tom witnessed, filed the original in my safe before Blake left. Claire hugged Blake after he left. "Thank you for believing in him." I documented the transaction. March 15, 2004, $18,500. Farm Fresh Prescott, lease deposit. Promise, $400 month when profitable. The restaurant opened September 2004. I went to the launch party. White tablecloths. fresh flowers. Menu printed on recycled paper. Blake working the room in chef's whites. "This is just the beginning," he told everyone. 6 months, and we'll be looking at expansion. 2 weeks later, he called. Couldn't make payroll. 3 employees threatening to walk. Needed $12,000 immediately. Tom and I were installing drywall. My phone rang twice before I answered. "Don't do it," Tom said. I called Blake back during lunch. $12,000 to cover payroll. Just this once. We had a slow week. Next month's projections are solid. Same terms as before. Written agreement. Fine. I wrote the check that afternoon. Documented it in the ledger. September 28, $2,000. $12,000. Farm Fresh Prescott payroll emergency. Promise. Repayment with original note terms. Farm Fresh closed 14 months after opening. November 2005. Bankruptcy filing showed $127,000 in liabilities. Vendors, suppliers, utilities. I was listed as an unsecured creditor for $30,500. Blake received debt discharge through federal bankruptcy court in May 2006. Wiped the slate clean. Farm Fresh Prescott never existed on paper. He moved back into our house the following week. Took his old bedroom. 8 dinners Claire cooked. Talked about regrouping. He never mentioned the money. Never apologized. Never acknowledged he'd signed promissory notes. I documented it anyway. May 2006. Farm Fresh bankruptcy final. $30,500 unpaid. Blake received discharge. No contact regarding repayment. Tom came over one Saturday. Found Blake asleep in the living room at 2 in the afternoon. How long's he staying? He needs time to figure things out. You're not charging him rent. He's Claire's son. He's also $30,000 in the hole to you. Tom shook his head, walked out to the workshop with me. You know he's never paying you back. Probably not. But you keep documenting it. Old habits. Blake stayed 8 months. Got a sales job at an office supply company. Moved out when he could afford first and last month's rent. I documented the lost rental value in my ledger. 8 months at fair market rate of $900 monthly. $7,200. Never mentioned it to Claire. The second major request came in 2011. Blake had been working sales jobs for 6 years, making enough to live, but always planning his next move. He brought his laptop to dinner, opened a PowerPoint presentation. Social media analytics, he said, clicked through slides showing engagement metrics and data visualization. Companies need tools to understand their audiences. This platform automates the entire process. What's the capital requirement? I asked. $45,000. Office lease, developer salaries, initial marketing. What's your business plan for revenue? Recurring revenue model. Monthly subscriptions scale better than table turns. I know what killed the restaurant. Claire leaned forward. This sounds more sustainable than the restaurant. Blake nodded. I've learned from my mistakes. This time I'm building something scalable. Tom was less diplomatic. We were working a bathroom renovation, installing tile. He wants 45 grand. Says he'll give me an equity stake, 20% ownership. You believe that? He's putting it in writing. Tom set down his trowel. Russell, he's not more experienced. He's more practiced at asking you for money. I provided the funding anyway. Blake signed an equity agreement, 20% ownership in Social Metric Analytics, Inc. Gee, I documented it. April 2011, $45,000. Social Metric Analytics Startup Capital. Promise, 20% equity stake, quarterly dividends when profitable. Blake hired 3 developers, friends from college with computer science degrees, rented office space in a tech incubator, posted photos on Facebook showing the team at work. The company lasted 18 months, burned through the initial capital. Blake requested another $15,000 for extended runway. I declined. Social Metric filed bankruptcy in 2013, $89,000 in liabilities. Unpaid contractors, vendor debt, outstanding office lease. I was listed as an investor owed $52,000. Blake blamed Facebook. They changed their API without warning, made our entire analytics engine obsolete. Completely unpredictable market conditions. I documented it. August 2013. Social Metric bankruptcy final. $52,000 unpaid. Blake attributes failure to platform changes beyond his control. Between ventures, Blake worked sales jobs, office equipment, insurance, digital marketing services, jobs that bored him but paid bills while he planned the next opportunity. Those years brought smaller requests, $3,000 for car repairs, $1,500 for moving expenses, $800 for new laptop. Each time I made him sign something. Each time I documented it. Tom's warnings became more direct. You're enabling him. I'm supporting family. Tom's jaw tightened. There's a difference. The third major venture started in 2017. Blake pitched real estate investing. The market's recovering. Properties are undervalued. I've identified 3 houses we can flip. How much? $78,000 total. Down payments and renovation budgets. I'm not in the real estate business. This is different. Hard assets. Tangible value. Not some tech startup that depends on algorithms. Claire was quieter by then. Blake's pattern had become undeniable, but when I looked at her, she nodded. One more chance. Winters Property Investments, LLC, needed financing. Blake applied for a business loan. The bank required a co-signer with established credit. I signed, against Tom's advice, against my own better judgment. Blake took owner distributions while making minimum loan payments. The properties sold at losses. The company folded after 2 years. Final bankruptcy filing showed $156,000 in liabilities. The bank called in the business loan I'd co-signed. $34,000 remaining. I paid it within the week. Couldn't let my credit suffer. Blake was already discussing his next venture by the time the bankruptcy finalized. I documented it all. The promissory notes were just the largest items. The ledgers contained everything. September 2017. Ledger entry, DeWalt compound miter, saw, 680. Milwaukee cordless kit, 890. Blake borrowed them for a flip property. I never saw them again. By 2019, I documented $73,000 in replacement costs. Car insurance premiums when he was between jobs. 32 months total across different periods. Medical bills when he had no insurance. $8,400 for an emergency room visit in 2015. Rent assistance during his divorce. 6 months at $1,200 monthly in 2018. Each transaction documented. Each promise broken. Each year another ledger filled with my handwriting. The text message came November 2021. Claire was in hospice. 3 weeks from death. Blake, need 3200 emergency. Car transmission failed. Can't get to work without it. I know I still owe you from the restaurant and the startup. I'll make it right when this next thing hits. I responded with a list. Unpaid restaurant loan. Unpaid startup investment. Unpaid real estate losses. Tools never returned. Blake, you're really going to nickel and dime me when Mom is dying? What kind of man are you? I stared at the message for 2 minutes. Claire had 3 weeks left. I sent the money without another word. Documented it in the ledger. November 18, $2,200. $3,200. Car repair emergency. Blake weaponizes Claire's terminal diagnosis to extract funds. Now the ledgers sat open across my desk. $347,000 in signed promissory notes. $73,000 in tools and expenses Blake never acknowledged as debt. 23 years of documentation. Not weapons, just records. Things written down because that's what you do when something matters. The ledgers documented everything. Whether I'd use them in court was still mine to decide. The ledgers sat untouched for 3 weeks. Then Gerald Morrison called about the will reading. His office smelled like lemon pledge and banker's boxes that had sat too long in storage. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, hands folded on my lap. Blake sat 3 feet to my left, legs crossed, checking his phone. 3 weeks since Claire's funeral. The casserole dishes from neighbors were still stacked in my refrigerator. Gerald opened the folder on his desk. Blue document backer visible beneath the pages. Claire's signature on the final page. Thank you both for coming. I'll read the relevant portions of Claire Moreno's last will and testament, executed May 2021, with proper witness and notarization. Blake set his phone face down on his knee. Gerald adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. The estate consists of the following assets. Residential property at 447 Juniper Lane. Joint savings account. Retirement account. Personal property including one 2019 Honda Key RV, book collection, and family photographs. I kept my eyes on the window behind Gerald's desk. Parking lot. Mountains in the distance. Gerald pulled a manila envelope from his desk drawer. Before I could ask, he slid it across to me. My name written on the front in Claire's handwriting. Below it, to be opened only in event of will contest. I took the envelope. The paper felt thick under my fingers. Mrs. Moreno's distribution follows Arizona community property law. To her surviving spouse, Russell Moreno, the residential property at 447 Juniper Lane, valued at $520,000, the joint savings account containing $87,000, and the retirement account with balance of $134,000. To her son, Blake Winters, the 2019 Honda Curvy, the complete book collection, a cash bequest of $25,000, and all family photographs predating her marriage to Russell Moreno. Blake's legs stopped bouncing. The leather chair creaked as he sat forward. Total distribution approximates $741,000 to Mr. Moreno and $43,000 plus personal items to Mr. Winters, reflecting the marital property accumulated during the 23-year marriage. Blake stood. The color spread from his collar to his hairline. The muscle near his ear started twitching. "Let me see that." Gerald slid the document across the desk. Blake grabbed it with both hands, flipping through pages, scanning signatures like he was searching for forgery. When was this signed? November 15th, 2020, 6 months before Mrs. Moreno's terminal diagnosis. She was medicated. You know, she was on pain medication by then. Mrs. Moreno had full mental capacity at the time of execution. Her physician provided a capacity assessment. Blake threw the document on the desk. This is exactly what I expected from someone who wormed his way into her life. I didn't move. My hands stayed folded. "Mr. Winters, I understand this is difficult, but the will is legally valid and reflects your mother's wishes." "My mother's wishes? You think she wanted to leave everything to him? You were her second husband. My father, my real father, he's the one she chose when she was young. You were just the retirement plan. 23 years of playing house doesn't erase her son from her legacy." Gerald started to respond. Blake cut him off. "Arizona law gives preference to surviving spouses in community property cases. The house was purchased during the marriage with joint funds." "Joint funds?" He paid the down payment with money he already had. "That house should be mine." The mortgage application and property deed list both parties as joint owners. Blake turned toward me. I looked up, met his eyes. "You manipulated her. You isolated her from me. You made sure she was dependent on you. So when she got sick, you could control everything." "Hard. I said nothing. You think I'm just going to walk away while you steal my mother's estate?" Gerald's voice stayed level. "Mr. Winters, if you wish to contest the will, you have 120 days from probate admission to file. The burden of proof will rest with you to demonstrate undue influence, lack of capacity, or fraud. I'm contesting it. All of it." Blake grabbed his phone off the chair, walked toward the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. "You're not keeping what's mine, Russell. I don't care how long this takes." The door slammed. The sound echoed off the law books lining the walls. Gerald waited 10 seconds, picked up the will, straightened the pages. You'll need to retain a probate attorney for the defense. What's the process? He'll file a formal contest alleging undue influence. You'll file a response. Discovery phase allows both parties to request documents and depositions. Trial likely in 4 to 6 months before Judge Khalil. What does he need to prove? That you had opportunity and disposition to influence Claire, that she was susceptible, and that you exerted improper influence resulting in an unnatural distribution. And I need to prove that Claire had independent legal counsel, that she possessed mental capacity, and that leaving marital assets to a spouse of 23 years is natural disposition, not the result of manipulation. I nodded. You have a recommendation for representation. Patricia Lowe, former military attorney. She specializes in protecting surviving spouses against will contests. Aggressive litigator with a strong track record. I've got some financial documentation. Brace, loans to Blake over the years. Gerald's expression shifted. The professional sympathy disappeared. His eyebrows raised slightly. What kind of documentation? Ledgers, promissory notes, bank statements. How much are we talking about? $347,000 in signed notes. 23 years of records. Gerald set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. Russell, that changes everything. If you can demonstrate a pattern of Blake receiving financial support he never repaid, you can potentially offset any inheritance with outstanding debts. I didn't keep the records for this, but you have them. Every transaction, witnessed and filed. Gerald pulled a business card from his desk drawer. Patricia Lowe, estate litigation. Phone number and address. Call her today. Bring the documentation. She'll know what to do with it. The parking lot was empty except for my truck and Blake's Audi. His car was already gone. I sat in the driver's seat with the envelope in my lap, tore it open carefully. 3 pages of cream stationery with blue floral border. Claire's handwriting, still steady from 6 weeks before the morphine made her hands shake. Russell, if you're reading this, Blake has done exactly what I knew he would. I'm so sorry. I should have been a better mother to him. I should have taught him that other people aren't just resources to exploit. But I failed, and now you're paying the price for my failure. Don't feel guilty about protecting what we built together. The house, the savings, the retirement account, none of that came from my first marriage. It came from your work, your business, your discipline. Blake has no right to it. He's had 23 years of your generosity, and he's earned nothing but debt. Show him what things cost for once in his life. Show him that actions have consequences. Show him that you can't just take and never give back. You're a better man than he'll ever be. Don't let him make you doubt that. I love you. I'm sorry I'm leaving you alone to fight this battle. But you're not really alone. Purgy, you have the truth that has to count for something. Claire fighting her son felt like betraying her memory. I folded the pages, put them back in the envelope. started the truck. The drive home took 12 minutes. I parked in the driveway, went straight to the workshop. The filing cabinet sat against the wall, 4 olive green units from 1986. I wheeled the appliance dolly from the corner. First cabinet tilted back onto the dolly. Wheeled it to the truck. Lowered the tailgate. Lifted the cabinet into the bed. 3 more trips. Mrs. Chen watched from her porch, coffee cup in hand. I secured the cabinets with ratchet straps. Closed the tailgate. Got back in the truck with Patricia Lowe's business card in my hand and Claire's letter in my shirt pocket. 20 minutes later, I pulled into Patricia Lowe's driveway. The Victorian house had a small sign in the yard, "Attorney at Law." I cut the engine. The filing cabinet sat visible through the truck bed cover. 23 years of documentation. Not weapons, just records. Things written down because they mattered. I opened the door and stepped out. I wheeled the dolly up the ramp. First filing cabinet balanced on it. Patricia stood beside the door, coffee mug in hand. Her eyes tracked each trip, the weight of the cabinets, the methodical way I secured them on the dolly. "That's 4, I said. Set the dolly down and wiped my forehead with my sleeve. "You brought everything. Everything that matters." She held the door open. I wheeled the last cabinet through, positioned it against the wall beside the others. Her consultation room had a large oak table with document scars worn into the wood. Bookshelves lined 2 walls. Law reporters mixed with reference books I couldn't identify. Her military commendations hung beside framed photographs of night skies. Stars, galaxies, things I'd never learned the names for. "Coffee?" she asked. "Thanks." She poured 2 mugs. We sat at the table. The filing cabinets stood against the wall like soldiers waiting for inspection. "Gerald Morrison called yesterday," she said. "Told me about Blake's contest. Said you have documentation. 23 years worth. Walk me through it." I walked through the basics. Claire, Blake, the house I bought with my business savings. His 3 businesses, 3 bankruptcies. The 17 promissory notes I'd filed away. Why keep such detailed records? Hers, Army habit, combat engineer 1979 to 1983. We documented everything. Supply requisitions, equipment transfers, maintenance logs. Captain got court-martialed once because his supply sergeant didn't keep proper records. 300,000 in missing equipment. No paperwork, no defense. Patricia set down her mug. You applied military record-keeping to personal finances. Just seemed like the right thing to do. Big transactions, written agreements. In case there's ever an audit. She smiled slightly. "May I examine your documentation?" I gestured toward the filing cabinets. Everything's labeled. Chronological order by year. She stood, opened the first cabinet. Pulled out the 1999 ledger. Brown leather, 9 by 12 inches. My handwriting filling every page. She carried it to the table. Flipped through, reading entries, checking dates. These are handwritten. Every one. She spent 2 hours at the table. Made notes in margins. Cross-referenced bank statements with ledger entries. asked specific questions. Everyone targeted. I sat in the client chair watching. My coffee went cold. She pulled bank statements from the second cabinet, cross-referenced them with ledger entries, made notes and margins, asked questions about specific transactions. This entry from March 2004, restaurant deposit. You have a promissory note? Filed in the third cabinet. Top drawer. Notes organized by date. She found it. Read Blake's signature. Tom's witness signature below. Carried it back to the table. Who's Tom Reardon? Business partner. He witnessed most of the early loans. Is he willing to testify? If I ask him to. Patricia opened the next ledger. Made more notes. Her professional expression cracked slightly. She looked up. Where did you learn to document like this? Perps, Army, combat engineer. We kept supply logs in triplicate. She nodded slowly. That explains it. This would stand up to federal audit. She pulled bankruptcy filings from the fourth cabinet. Spread them across the table. Farm Fresh Prescott. Social Metric Analytics. Winter's Property Investments. Each one listing me as an unpaid creditor. These are federal court records. Blake got debt discharge. I absorbed the losses. Public record means he can't dispute them. The court already ruled these debts existed. Patricia examined the November 2021 text message printout. Blake's words, I know I still owe you from the restaurant and the startup. This resets the statute of limitations. On which loans? All of them. Written acknowledgement of debt extends the enforcement period. He gave you a gift by putting it in writing. She organized the documents into stacks. Promissory notes, bank statements, bankruptcy filings, text messages, ledger entries cross-referenced to each transaction. How much total? $347,000 in signed notes. Another $73,000 in tools and expenses he never acknowledged. Patricia sat back in her chair. Blake's contest depends on portraying you as a predator who manipulated a vulnerable woman. We're going to transform this into an accounting case. How? Blake has to prove 5 elements. Opportunity, disposition, susceptibility, improper influence, unnatural disposition. That's a high bar when Claire had independent legal counsel. Can he prove that? No. Claire had independent legal counsel when she drafted the will. Gerald can testify to her mental capacity. The will was executed 6 months before her terminal diagnosis, and leaving marital assets to a spouse of 23 years is completely natural disposition. What about the counterclaim? Patricia leaned forward. Arizona law allows us to offset any inheritance Blake receives against documented debts to you. The 17 promissory notes are legally enforceable contracts. The bankruptcy filings prove pattern. The text message acknowledges the debts. We file a counterclaim seeking full repayment plus statutory interest. He can't pay. Doesn't matter. The court can offset his $43,000 inheritance against the $347,000 he owes you. That leaves him with 0 inheritance and $304,000 in outstanding debt. Will Judge Khalil allow it? Marianne Khalil is the daughter of immigrant small business owners who kept meticulous records. She's known for evidence-based rulings. When she sees this documentation, Blake's emotional appeals won't matter. Numbers don't lie. Patricia organized the stacks into a timeline. 1999 to 2022. Every broken promise in chronological order. What's your fee structure? Flat rate for the will defense, $20,000, plus 25% of any counterclaim amount I actually collect. If Blake has no assets, you pay the flat rate only. If Blake has no assets to collect, then you pay the flat rate only. But the judgment still exists. If he ever has income or assets, you can enforce it. I nodded. How long until trial? Blake's attorney will file the formal contest within 30 days. We file our answer and counterclaim. Discovery phase allows us to request documents and depose Blake about each loan. Trial, likely in 4 to 6 months. What happens at the deposition? We present every promissory note and ask Blake to confirm his signature. We show him the bankruptcy filings and ask why he never repaid you. We play the text message and ask him to explain it. He can't deny evidence with his own signature on it. Patricia picked up Claire's letter again. Read it once more, set it down. This gives you permission to fight without guilt. Your wife knew exactly who her son was, and she chose you anyway. Honor that choice. The weight I'd carried since the will reading shifted. Not gone, but different. Validated. I'll take the case, I said. Patricia extended her hand. We shook. I'll need Tom Reardon's contact information, and I want to organize these ledgers into evidence binders, color-coded by transaction type. Whatever you need. I gave her Tom's phone number, helped her carry the filing cabinets into her office. She already had color-coded labels ready. Brown for ledgers, blue for bank statements, red for promissory notes, yellow for bankruptcy filings, green for text messages. How long to prepare? 2 weeks to organize everything. Another week to draft the counterclaim. Blake's attorney will probably try to settle when he sees the documentation. What if he doesn't? Then we go to trial and let Judge Khalil see what 23 years of broken promises looks like. I drove home as the sun dropped behind the mountains. Relief and dread fought for space in my chest. Professional validation that my documentation mattered. Legal confirmation that defending myself was sound strategy. But also the knowledge that family battle was becoming public legal war. That night, Patricia drove to the dark sky site outside Prescott, set up her telescope, pointed it toward Andromeda. The galaxy filled her viewfinder, spiral arms visible even in long exposure. She photographed it for 3 hours, packed her equipment as dawn approached, drove back to Prescott, thinking about filing deadlines and deposition questions and the courtroom where numbers would speak louder than biology. 3 months of discovery followed. Document requests, depositions scheduled. Then in August 2022, Blake's turn came. Blake walked into Patricia's conference room like he was attending a formality, not a deposition. Designer button-down, untucked over dark jeans. Pride. Limited edition sneakers still had the store tags visible on the sole. Hair styled with product. He looked like success. His mouth curled at the corners, same expression he'd worn at the will reading. Like this was already over. He sat across from me and Patricia with his legs crossed, one ankle resting on his knee. His attorney, Marcus Webb, settled into the chair beside him, expensive suit and fake tan, briefcase clicking open with practiced efficiency. The court reporter set up her stenography machine at the end of the table. Patricia organized her evidence binders. Brown for ledgers, blue for bank statements. Red for promissory notes. Yellow for bankruptcy filings. Green for text messages. State your full name for the record, Patricia said. Blake Andrew Winters. And you understand you're under oath. Yes. Patricia pulled the first red binder toward her. Opened it to a tabbed page. Slid the document across the table. Do you recognize this document? Blake glanced at it. It's a promissory note. Dated March 15, 2004. Your signature is at the bottom. Confirm it. He looked closer. The muscle near his ear twitched once. Yes, and this states you borrowed $18,500 from Russell Moreno for a restaurant lease deposit, correct? That was family support, not a business loan. Patricia tapped the page. It states here that you promised to repay at $400 per month beginning when the restaurant turned profitable. Correct? My mother wanted to help me. Please answer the question. Did you sign a promissory note agreeing to repay $400 monthly? Blake shifted in his chair. Yes. How many payments did you make? The restaurant didn't work out. How many payments did you make, Mr. CO? Winters? None. Patricia pulled the next document. Same process. September 2004, $12,000 for payroll. Blake's signature. No payments made. Then another, March 2011, $45,000 for the startup capital. Blake's signature. 0 repayments. She worked through the first 5 promissory notes methodically, each time asking him to confirm the signature, each time asking him to recall the stated repayment terms, each time asking why no payments were made. Blake uncrossed his legs, sat forward. His left knee started bouncing. Did you sign this note? Yes. Did you make any payments? No. She worked through the remaining 12 notes. Same questions, same signatures, same admissions of 0 payments. Blake's hands gripped the edge of the table. His answers got shorter. Patricia reached for the green binder, pulled out a printed text message exchange, slid it across the table. Do you recognize this text message thread? Color drained from Blake's face. The spray tan couldn't hide it. His jaw clenched. This is dated April 18, 2022, 3 weeks before your mother's death. Did you send this message to Russell Moreno? The text sat between us on the table. Blake's words in black and white. I know I still owe you from the restaurant and the startup. I'll make it right when this next thing hits. Yes? So you acknowledged owing money from the restaurant and the startup. Burge, I was just saying that to keep the peace. You were acknowledging a debt in writing, correct? Marcus Webb leaned forward. Where is this going? Financial records between family members are irrelevant to a will contest based on undue influence. Patricia didn't look at him. Arizona law allows offsetting any inheritance against documented debts owed to the deceased's spouse. Your client's unpaid loans are directly relevant to estate distribution. She pulled the yellow binder. 3 bankruptcy filings. Farm Fresh Prescott. Social Metric Analytics. Winters Property Investments. These are federal court records showing 3 bankruptcy discharges. Each one lists Russell Moreno as an unpaid creditor. Is that correct? Blake nodded. Please answer verbally for the record. Yes, Farm Fresh Prescott, 2005. You owed Mr. Moreno $30,500. You received a debt discharge? Yes. Social Metric Analytics, 2013. You owed Mr. Moreno $52,000. You received a debt discharge? Yes. Winters Property Investments, 2019. You owed Mr. Moreno $78,000 in co-signed business loans. You received a debt discharge. The bank called in that loan. Russell paid it. So he absorbed the financial loss while you walked away from the debt? Blake's smirk disappeared. His jaw clenched. Then his hands gripped the edge of the table. I tried to make those businesses work. Patricia reached for the blue binder, pulled out a stapled transcript. I'd like to play a witness statement for the record. Devin Winters, your former wife, deposed on July 22, 2022. She pressed play on a small recorder. Devin's voice came through the speaker. Clear, measured, angry. Blake told me in October 2021, before his mother was diagnosed, that when she died, he was getting everything. He said Russell was just the second husband and had no legal claim to her estate. He said he'd already talked to an attorney about contesting the will if she left anything to Russell. Blake lunged forward in his chair. That bitch is lying. She's bitter about the divorce. Patricia stopped the recording. The divorce where you opened credit cards in her name. Marcus Webb stood. We need a break. He grabbed Blake's arm, pulled him toward the hallway. The door closed but didn't latch completely. Their voices carried through. Do you understand how bad this looks? Marcus's whisper was urgent. You acknowledged the debts in writing. The bankruptcy filings are public record. Your ex-wife just proved this was premeditated before your mother got sick. Blake's response was too quiet to hear. We need to discuss settlement. Seriously discuss it. The hallway went silent. Footsteps. The door opened. Blake walked back in with his jaw set. He dropped into his chair and stared at the table. Let's continue, Marcus said. Patricia asked her remaining questions. Blake answered in single syllables. Yes, no, I don't recall. She ended by asking about his current financial position. How much do you have in your checking account? About $340. Savings? $1,200. What assets do you own? My car, 2015 Audi. I still owe $8,000 on the loan. Patricia closed her final binder. Thank you, Mr. Winters. That's all I have. The court reporter packed up her stenography machine. Marcus Webb gathered his files with quick, tight movements. Blake stood without looking at anyone and walked out. I sat at the table after they left. Patricia organized her binders back into their stacks. The evidence that had taken 23 years to accumulate. The documents Blake couldn't deny because they carried his signature. The satisfaction I'd expected never came. Just exhausted sadness watching the stepson I'd supported for 2 decades reveal exactly who he'd always been. Someone who took without giving. Someone who planned inheritance grabs before his mother was even diagnosed. Someone who'd signed 17 promises and kept 0. Patricia looked up from her organization. Judge Khalil is going to see right through him. I nodded. The truth was documented. The numbers didn't lie. Blake had nothing left but biology, and biology wasn't enough. Courtroom 4C smelled like floor wax and old wood. I sat beside Patricia at the defendant's table, hands folded on my notepad, watching 24 contractors fill the gallery behind me. Tom had organized them. They'd taken the day off, closed job sites, worn their cleanest work clothes. Flannel shirts, pressed jeans, Carhartt jackets, steel-toed boots showing years of wear but cleaned for the occasion. The scene I'd glimpsed weeks ago in fragments now played out in full. 24 contractors settling into gallery benches. Patricia organizing evidence binders at our table. Blake, 3 feet to my right, in a navy suit that cost more than I made in a week. Blake sat at the plaintiff's table, checking his phone. White shirt, silk tie. Legs crossed, ankle resting on his knee. He looked bored, like this was a formality, not a trial. Judge Marianne Khalil entered through the side door. Black robes, reading glasses on a chain. Gray-streaked dark hair pulled back. She took her seat behind the bench between the American and Arizona flags. In the matter of the estate of Claire Moreno, will contest filed by Blake Winters. Counsel, your opening statements. Marcus Webb stood, adjusted his tie, walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, this case is about a predatory man who isolated a vulnerable woman and convinced her to sign away her biological son's rightful inheritance. Russell Moreno married Claire Winters in 1999 when she was a 42-year-old widow with a teenage son. For 23 years, he positioned himself as indispensable to her life. Then, in her final months, when she was medicated and terrified, he convinced her to disinherit the son she'd raised alone after her first husband's death. This isn't about family. It's about biological bonds that should transcend legal paperwork. A mother's love for her only son. This will doesn't reflect Claire's true wishes. It reflects Russell Moreno's manipulation of a dying woman who had no one else to turn to. I kept my eyes on the table. My hands stayed folded. Patricia stood, walked to the evidence table. The 24 brown leather ledgers sat stacked chronologically. She rested her hand on the top one. The evidence will show that Blake Winters has spent 23 years exploiting Russell Moreno financially while contributing nothing to the marital estate he now claims to deserve. Mr. Moreno documented every transaction. 17 signed promissory notes totaling $347,000. 3 federal bankruptcy filings listing him as an unpaid creditor. Text messages acknowledging debts. Bank statements proving transfers. This isn't a case about manipulation. It's a case about a son who weaponized his mother's death to avoid accountability for 2 decades of broken promises. The trial proceeded over 3 days. Patricia presented the ledgers chronologically. She opened 1999, read 3 entries aloud. Opened 2000, read 5 more. The pattern emerged without her stating it. Tom took the witness box Tuesday afternoon. He sat with his back straight, hands on the armrests, making eye contact with Judge Khalil. State your relationship to Russell Moreno. Business partner, known him 38 years. Did you witness any financial transactions between Mr. Moreno and Blake Winters? Yeah, most of them. Witnessed the first one and most of the others after that. March 2004, Blake needed money for a restaurant lease. Russell made him sign a promissory note. I witnessed the signature. Did Blake repay the loan? No. Restaurant went bankrupt 14 months later. Russell lost $30,500. Were there other loans? 17 that I know of. Blake to show up, had some new idea, needed money to make it happen. Russell made him sign papers every time. Blake never paid him back. Not once. Marcus Webb cross-examined, tried suggesting the loans were gifts, that family members support each other without expectation of repayment. Tom shook his head. Russell's not a bank. But he kept records, like one, because Blake kept making promises he never honored. Patricia introduced the 17 promissory notes as exhibits, each one with Blake's signature, each one stating specific repayment terms, each one unpaid. She presented 3 federal bankruptcy filings. Farm Fresh Prescott, 2005. Social Metric Analytics, 2013. Winters Property Investments, 2019. Each one listing me as an unpaid creditor. Public court records Blake couldn't dispute. Wednesday morning, she introduced Exhibit 47. Devin Winters, Blake's ex-wife from his 2018 divorce, had been deposed 3 weeks earlier. Patricia played the recorded statement. Devin's voice came through the courtroom speakers. Blake told me in October 2021, before his mother was diagnosed, that when she died, he was getting everything. He said Russell was just the second husband and had no legal claim to her estate. The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing mid-sentence. Blake stared at the table. His jaw clenched. The muscle near his ear started twitching. Marcus Webb objected. Hearsay. Judge Khalil overruled. The statement showed Blake's state of mind, his planning before Claire's terminal diagnosis. Wednesday afternoon, Patricia asked the judge for permission to introduce one final exhibit, Claire's sealed letter. Mrs. Moreno left this with her estate attorney with instructions to open it only in the event of a will contest. It demonstrates her capacity, her awareness of her son's character, and her independent judgment. Judge Khalil granted permission. Patricia opened the envelope, unfolded 3 pages of cream stationery with blue floral border. Claire's handwriting filled every line. She read it aloud, her voice carried across the courtroom. The contractors in the gallery leaned forward. Russell, if you're reading this, Blake has done exactly what I knew he would. I'm so sorry. I should have been a better mother to him. I should have taught him that other people aren't just resources to exploit. But I failed, and now you're paying the price for my failure. In the gallery, Tom Reardon looked down at his hands. 2 other contractors wiped their eyes. Don't feel guilty about protecting what we built together. The house, the savings, the retirement account, none of that came from my first marriage. It came from your work, your business, your discipline. Blake has no right to it. Blake sat rigid, jaw still clenched. His hands gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles went white. Show him what things cost for once in his life. Show him that actions have consequences. Show him that you can't just take and never give back. You're a better man than he'll ever be. Patricia folded the pages, set them on the evidence table. Judge Khalil wrote in her notebook for 2 minutes. The courtroom stayed silent. Thursday morning, closing arguments. Marcus Webb stood, made his final appeal. Blake Winters is Claire's biological son. That relationship existed before Russell Moreno entered her life and would have continued after. A mother's estate should pass to her child, not to a second husband who had 23 years to benefit from the marriage. Patricia responded with a spreadsheet, projected it on the screen beside the judge's bench. Blake Winters owes Russell Moreno $347,000 in documented unpaid loans. Blake's inheritance under the contested will is $43,000. You cannot claim an inheritance while owing the surviving spouse 7 times that amount. Numbers don't lie. Mr. Winters signed 17 promissory notes and honored 0. Judge Khalil set down her pen. I'm prepared to rule from the bench. The courtroom went still. Blake sat forward. The court finds no evidence that Russell Moreno exerted manipulation over Claire Moreno. Mrs. Moreno had independent legal counsel when drafting her will. She possessed clear mental capacity 6 months before her terminal diagnosis. The disposition of community property to a surviving spouse of 23 years is natural under Arizona law, particularly when that spouse contributed financially to the marital estate while the biological son contributed nothing. Blake's face drained of color. The court validates Russell Moreno's counterclaim for documented debts. Blake Winters' inheritance of $43,000 is offset against $347,000 in unpaid promissory notes, leaving Mr. Winters with 0 inheritance and a judgment of $304,000 owed to Mr. $4,000. Moreno. Judge Khalil looked directly at Blake. Mr. Winters weaponized his mother's death to steal from a man who spent 23 years supporting him financially. I will not reward that betrayal. Blake sat frozen. His hand still gripped the table edge. Behind me, slow applause started. One contractor, then another. Then the whole gallery. The sound built until the bailiff stood. Order. The applause stopped. But the message had landed. I felt no triumph, just the relief of a job finished. Like packing up tools after a long project, Blake stood, kept his eyes on the floor, walked to the door, pushed through it without turning back. Marcus Webb gathered his files and followed. The contractors filed out behind me. Tom waited by the door. "You did good," he said. I nodded, couldn't find words that fit what I felt. Exhausted, sad, relieved, all of it at once. Patricia packed her evidence binders. The 23 ledgers went back into their boxes. "It's finished," she said. I walked out of the courthouse into October sunlight. The mountains stood clear against the horizon. Same mountains Claire and I had looked at for 23 years. The battle was over. The numbers had spoken. But winning felt like losing something I'd never get back. 6 months after the trial, April 2023, I stood at my workbench holding the Stanley No. 4. The blade caught morning light. I set it against the maple board, pushed forward. Wood shavings curled off the edge, paper thin and uniform. The memorial shelf took shape under my hands. I shaped the memorial shelf. Corner joints fitted tight. Surface planed smooth enough to feel warm under my palm. Gravel crunched in the driveway. Tom came through the side door, foam cups balanced in one hand. "Thought you'd be here," he said. He set one cup on the bench beside me, leaned against the filing cabinets. I made 3 more passes with the plane. Neither of us spoke. 40 years of friendship meant we didn't need to fill silence. Blake disappeared after the verdict. Moved to Phoenix, worked some sales job. 6 months, no calls, no texts. The judgment exists on paper. That's enough. The house is mine now. All the legal challenges settled. But most nights, I sit in rooms too big for one person. Claire's reading chair still faces the window. Her garden still blooms outside. I'm thinking about selling. Starting smaller. Business is better than expected. Contractors who came to the trial send referrals. Clients who want to work with someone who keeps his word. Tom says the phone rings twice as much as it used to. Patricia invited me to photograph stars last month. Dark sky site outside town. I went once, stood in the cold looking at Andromeda through her telescope while she adjusted focal length and exposure times. A trillion stars burning light that started traveling before I was born. Made inheritance disputes seem appropriately small. The ledgers went back in their cabinets. Not weapons anymore, just records of choices made and prices paid. I'd framed Claire's letter the week after trial, hung it beside our wedding photo where I could see both while working. I finished the shelf's final edge, carried it inside. Living room light caught the grain I'd spent 3 hours bringing out. Mounted it on the wall where Claire used to sit. Set her urn in the center. Surrounded it with photos from 23 years. Estate sales, job sites, Sunday mornings. Back in the workshop, I picked up the next project. A 1940s block plane with a cracked handle. My hands moved without hesitation. No weight pressing down. No anticipation of the next crisis Blake would bring. Claire's last words played on repeat. Don't let him turn you bitter. I never wanted to be right about Blake. Would have preferred those receipts gathering dust unused. Blake becoming responsible adult. Family relationship surviving. But the battle came anyway. I fought it the same way I'd restored the Stanley. No. 4. Patient work. Sharp tools. Things built to last.